What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Let's Talk Black History with me, Miss Tay Nicole. Today, we're talking about a victory that doesn't get nearly enough attention in history books or in conversations. When people think about the civil rights movement, they often think about the 1950s and 1960s. They think about the marches, boycotts, court cases, and legendary leaders. But years before some of those most famous civil rights victories, one woman in her 80s helped strike a major blow against segregation. Her name was Mary Church Terrell. And in 1953, her fight helped lead to a Supreme Court decision that declared segregated restaurants and lunch counters in Washington, D.C. as unlawful. At 86 years old, she was still battling injustice. So, let's talk about it. Before we get into the court case, we need to understand who Mary Church Terrell was. Miss Mary Church Terrell was born in 1863 during the Civil War. She was born into a family that had once been enslaved but became successful after emancipation. She went on to become one of the most educated black women in her generation, but education wasn't enough to shield her from racism. Throughout their life, she witnessed discrimination, segregation, and inequality. Instead of accepting it, she decided her life she decided her life was way more and worth fighting for. She became a teacher, writer, suffragist, a civil rights activist. She was also one of the founders of the National Association of Colored Women and spent decades advocating for racial and gender equality. By 1950s, many people her age would have retired. Mary Church Terrell was just getting started on another fight. A lot of people assume Washington, D.C. was different from the South, but segregation existed there too. Many restaurants refused to serve black people and black customers. Lunch counters denied service. Black residents often faced humiliation simply for trying to eat at an establishment open to white customers. What made the situation especially interesting was the Washington, D.C was that Washington, D.C. actually had anti discrimination laws dating back to the 1870s. The problem? Those laws had largely been ignored and forgotten. For decades, businesses continued discriminating despite those laws, technically being on the books. But Miss Mary Church Terrell believed those laws could still be enforced, and she was determined to prove it. The restaurant protest is something we're going to talk about next. In the late 1940s, early 1950s, Ms. Terrell joined a coordinated campaign challenging segregation in D.C. for the restaurants. She and others activists intentionally visited segregated establishments. When they were denied service, they documented it and pursued legal action. These actions were similar to later sit-ins that became famous during the civil rights movement. I said Civil War, I'm sorry. Except this was happening years earlier. At an age when most people were slowing down, Terrell was helping lead demonstrations and legal challenges. Her demonstrations inspired younger generations of activists. Now, eventually, the legal battle reached the United States Supreme Court. The case became known as District of Columbia versus John R. Thompson Co. The central question was simple: were Washington, D.C. discrimination laws from the 1870s still valid? The court unanimously ruled that they were. That meant restaurants and lunch counters in Washington, D.C. could no longer legally segregate customers. It was a major civil rights victory, and it happened before some of the most famous Supreme Court rulings associated with the civil rights movement happened. So, this case matters because this decision mattered for several reasons. First, it directly challenged segregation. Second, it demonstrated that legal action could successfully dismantle discriminatory systems. Third, it showed the power of persistence. Miss Church Terrell didn't suddenly become an activist in her 80s. She had spent decades fighting for justice. This victory was built on a lifetime of advocacy. And perhaps most importantly, it helped build momentum for the future civil rights victories. The fight for equality didn't begin with one case or one movement. It was built by generations of people refusing to give up. So today, Miss Mary Church Terrell is recognized as one of the most important civil rights pioneers in American history. But she still doesn't receive the same level of recognition as many leaders of the civil rights movement. Her work helped connect multiple generations of activism. She fought for women's rights. She fought for voting rights. She fought against segregation. And at 86 years old, she helped achieve one of the most significant legal victories of her lifetime. That's incredible legacy. The story of Mary Church Terrell reminds us that change doesn't always come from the people society expects. Sometimes it's an 86-year-old woman refusing to accept injustice. Sometimes it's a forgotten law being rediscovered. And sometimes it's ordinary people deciding enough is enough. The next time you hear about the civil rights movement, remember that its victories were built on decades of work by people like Miss Mary Church Terrell. If you enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk Black History with me, Miss Tay Nicole, make sure you do me a big favor and that's hit the like button, comment, subscribe, and share. And let me know in the comments, what's another overlooked civil rights victory that deserves more attention? I have been your host, Miss Tay Nicole, and I will see y'all in the next episode. Make sure y'all do me a big favor, and that's stay peaceful, that's stay blessed, and let's stay black, baby. Peace out.